Golda Meir once said, if the Palestinians put down their weapons today, there would be no more violence. If the Jews put down their weapons today, there would be no more Israel. Palestinian supporters have sometimes claimed that the October 7th massacre was caused by Israel's conduct and policies towards the Palestinians over the last 75 years. The question is Hamas's October 7th slaughter of Israeli civilians Israel's fault? And I would like you again to answer it. Start off.
Yeah, I'm going to stand up when it's time to answer the question. I'm just in some physical pain.
Oh, you need anything?
Just to sit down when I'm not talking, yeah.
No problem.
I should play the Powerball. My number keeps getting drawn here first. Is Israel's, ask the final part of the question again.
Is Hamas's October 7th slaughter of Israeli civilians Israel's fault?
No. You might want to wait till I'm done before you clap. You might regret this. I don't think that if we begin from the place that it was both legally and morally improper to kill civilians, then I would not blame civilians for their own death any more than I would blame a rape victim for what they wore or for how they behaved. I could have a severe critique of Israel, but if I begin from the place of saying that this is a moral atrocity to kill civilians or to capture civilians, then no, I wouldn't blame anyone for that except the people who committed the harm. Where I think we all agree on that. That's a full stop. However, there's another piece to this that I want us to talk about as well, which is how we get to these conditions. History doesn't begin on October 7th. The Hamas attacks on October 7th were entirely foreseeable. They were entirely predictable. And it's not because of some natural violent tendencies among Arabs or Palestinians or among Hamas or anything like that. It's because these are the conditions of occupation. These are the conditions of siege. In 2006, Israel doesn't leave Gaza. Israel redeploys its troops to the borders of Gaza. Israel still continues to control Gaza by land, air, and by sea. It controls the population registry. It controls the electromagnetic sphere. It controls what goes in and what goes out, the food that goes in, the nutrients that go in, all of this stuff. There's no airport in Gaza. There's never been a moment of self-determination inside of Gaza. And so when people live in unlivable conditions, when people live in conditions of extraordinary violence and extraordinary deprivation, it is entirely predictable and foreseeable that they are going to resist this type of pressure and this type of violence. That does not excuse killing innocent people. That does not excuse kidnapping innocent people. It is, however, predictable, and we have to be smart and nuanced enough to have those two separate, distinct conversations.
Thank you.
Very familiar with the narrative of a victim. I lived this most of my childhood, believing that we had to face massacres and genocide and ethnic cleansing, and there is occupation, and Israel is the root cause of our problems, all the problems, our honor killings and child abuse and domestic violence, discrimination. We blamed everything on Israel. But today, as a grown-up, I cannot believe this narrative anymore. What we need to educate the Palestinian people history, how things originated. And all the lies, turning defeats of our forefathers into massacres and genocide was not very helpful. It just created an entire generation of hatred rather than give them the truth that we were defeated, Let's move on. Hamas had an option. If they dropped their weapon and recognized Israel's right to exist, there wouldn't be a situation in Gaza. The Arabs had the opportunity in 1948, equal opportunity like Israel, to declare their independence. But they remembered after 5 major wars, later in 1988, 40 years later, to declare their independence without defining even the borders. We are not Arabs. The children are not Arabs. I mean, the children are not Palestinians. We are not Palestinians. The children are just children. And the situation in Gaza, the situation in the West Bank, frankly, as son of that region, I tell you that it's self-inflicted pain based on the poor choices of our leadership. And those are the greatest enemy of the Arab children in that region. And this is why I stand here. I'm not a pro-Israel, anti-Palestine, but I know the pain of a child of that region. And I don't want this cycle of violence to continue for eternity while the con artists worldwide taking advantage and burning the children for status and for money. This is where I wanted to stop.
Do you have a rebuttal?
I always have a rebuttal.
Yeah.
I don't think it's one of those weird things where if I don't have a rebuttal, it's like, ooh, we got owned on the internet.
By the way, you don't need to use, neither of you need to use all the time that you have if you don't need it. Because we can use the time.
I think we're both talkers enough to use it.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is I don't know if we need 2 rounds for this because I think I'd rather, like you, I think there's other questions we could go to. I think we don't disagree that much on at least half of it. I disagree with everything you just said, but I think that'll come out. And it's a good thing, and that'll come out in subsequent questions.
Maybe can you just summarize what you disagree with?
So my disagreement with one is this idea that Arabs simply lose wars and then blame everybody else, and that all the problems of the Middle East are to Arab failure. That would be as unreasonable as saying that every problem in the Middle East is due to Israel's failures, right? I just that's not how politics works. That's not how human nature works. No one is blameless in any kind of struggle over liberation, any kind of struggle over land. And effectively what you're saying is that it's all the Palestinians' fault and that Israel has made no mistakes. That's what you're saying. Is that fair? Is that a fair characterization of what you said? Okay. And so that's where I would disagree. You've said several things historically I disagree with. I disagree first with the premise that Israel is simply responding, right? The 6-Day War was not, even Israel at this point, and even the most prominent Israeli historian suggested Israel's actions were a preemptive act of self-defense, not that they responded. It's not that Arabs attacked first and Israel responded. That's not even Israel's narrative. So you're actually articulating a more fundamentalist narrative of Israeli self-defense, and even Israel is. Israel doesn't say that. They say that we fought in preemptive self-defense, which again, international law, which I know some of y'all don't rock with clearly, but by the groans, it doesn't allow for that. I mean, again, we can look at international doctrine, we can look at convention, and see that that's simply not the case. Arabs, or in this case specifically Palestinians, of course they've made mistakes. They've made bad deals. They've pushed back against deals that I think, in retrospect, they may feel differently about. There's been divides among leadership. There's all kinds of mistakes that I'm sure every people in every nation around the world may claim. But fundamentally, even when you go to the starting point that you begin with in 1948, which is not where I would begin, the Palestinians' decision to not declare statehood was not a response to irresponsibility. It was a response to the UN Partition Agreement, Resolution 181, which was fundamentally unfair, as was the Peel Partition, as were the Clinton Accords. And you and I may disagree, or all of us may agree or disagree about how the Palestinian people responded to those deals, but fundamentally they were unfair and unjust.
Thank you.
I agree with you. They were unfair because the United Nations gave the Arabs more land than they gave to Israel originally. Definitely unfair because 55% of the territory from the river to the sea was given to the Arabs. But instead of the Arabs taking the opportunity to declare their independence, they declared war against Israel. The Jews did not reach the point in 1948 to declare their independence for cheap. They had to fight. This is the history that Palestinians or Arabs are not educated about. The Jewish people paid blood in order to achieve their independence. Many Jewish people died in the process of fighting against the colonizers. So now to accuse Israel of being the colonizer of a political entity that never existed, then blame Israel for the suffering of the Palestinians or the Arabs who did not grab the opportunity to declare their independence and coexist with Israel. Instead of investing their energy to establish an Arab state, they invested their entire energy to destroy Israel. And this is the biggest mistake of the Arabs.